Now, next for everybody, we have two exciting panels coming up, with the first panel addressing gig economy in Southeast Asia's context, moderated by myself. And the second panel will seek to identify shared outcomes and will be moderated by Sarah Elder from the ILO. So right now, let me introduce all the wonderful speakers and moderator today. Let's start with the first panel speakers, Lim Yu Hang. So Yu Hang is the Group Managing Director for Public Affairs at Grab, leading the teams and regional efforts across public policy, strategic relations, policy advocacy, and public-private sector partnerships. Now, prior to Grab, Yu Hang spent 14 years in management consulting, and he was the MD and partner at Boston Consulting Group, known as BCG as well, where he led the topic of Industry 4.0 across Asia Pacific. And he also ran BCG's Innovation Center of Operations in Singapore. Yu Hang began his career in Singapore government in the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry of Environment. Next, we have Pandu Sharma. Now, Pandu is one of Southeast Asia's leading investors in the seed and early growth stages. He's a managing partner of Indies Capital. Pandu also serves as the chairman of Indonesia for C Group, a leading Southeast Asian tech company, the board member of Gojek, one of Indonesia's first unicorn tech companies, and the director of Toba Bara, a leading publicly listed energy enterprise in Indonesia. Pandu also serves in multiple organizations to promote entrepreneurship and education in Southeast Asia. He is the head of energy in Indonesia's Chamber of Commerce, a board member of Endeavor, which is a global nonprofit organization for entrepreneurs, and is a chairman for Stanford University's Alumni Association in Indonesia and the Phillips Academy Alumni Association. Next, we have Trevor Sworn. Trevor originally is from England, but has lived in Cambodia for more than 21 years. From 2011 to the present time, Trevor is the co-founder and executive director at Enduring Education Consultancy, specializing in education, vocational training, migration, employment, research, and organizational development in both private and public sectors. And Trevor is also on the board of the Cambodian Federation of Employers and an active part of the TVET subcommittee, interacting with government and global donors such as ILO. He's also on the board of the British Chamber of Commerce. We also have Adrian Tan, who is the strategist for future of work at the Institute of Human Resource Professionals. Adrian was a serial entrepreneur in the recruitment, career search, and HR consultancy space, leading to 2 HR Vendors of the Year awards, SHRI HR Entrepreneur Award and Global Recruiters Best Marketing Award. Adrian is one of the top global influencers in the HR tech space by AIHR, and he writes extensively about the future of work on his blog and is the creator of Singapore HR Tech Market Map. He also interviews future of work enablers on his podcast, The Adrian Tan Show, and is a frequent contributor to Channel News Asia. Now, session 2 will be moderated by Sarah Elder, who is a senior economist and head of Regional Economic and Social Analysis Unit in ILO's Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific in Bangkok. Sarah spent 5 years as Chief Tech Advisor on the ILO Work for Youth project and more than 10 years working in the area of labor market information and analysis in the Employment Trends Unit. She has written extensively on issues on labor market transitions of young people, labor market, and employment trends. And speaker-wise, in session 2, we'll also have Dr. Noor Aslan Ghazali. Now, Tan Sri Noor Aslan is a professor of economics at UKM Graduate School of Business. He is a member of the Economic Action Council and currently the executive director of the Secretariat of EAC. He was the vice chancellor of UKM from 2014 to 2018. He is a Mason Fellow of Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University and also a Commonwealth Fellow of Financial Economics and Banking of the Association of Commonwealth Universities. Tan Sri is also honored as a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons of Edinburgh, also conferred with honorary professor of economics by the University of Sabarjaya, Malaysia, for his contribution to Malaysia's economic development. He received Distinguished Civilian Service Award for 2020 and was also a member of the Monetary Policy Committee of the Central Bank of Malaysia from 2015 to 2019. He currently serves at the National Development Planning Council. Professor Aslan will be joined by Yu Hang Lim as speakers in session 2. So, wow, I mean, I'm just so impressed by all our speakers. Thank you for taking time to join us today on this exciting topic. Now, to kick off session one, much of the debate around the gig economy has taken place in North America now and Europe, driven by the sharp increase in on-demand work gigs delivered through the digital platforms. A lot of the discussion centers on gig worker protections and the obligations of government to ensure that this industry is appropriately regulated, which just now we also heard from Uma are top of her concerns as well. And in Southeast Asia, the gig economy has actually similarly grown very quickly. With debates over worker protections emerging in this region, we actually need to consider, in light of all these unique aspects to gig work in Southeast Asia, relating to two areas. One is the characteristic of alternative work. If the gig workers, were not having these jobs, what would they hold? And also the context of labor market governance in countries where the informal economy prevails. So a lot of things to unpack. Why don't we start with Yu Hang? Yu Hang, from your perspective, from a gig platform tech company, how have gig economy platforms evolved in the region, you think? And how has this really helped to address the existing economic or labor market challenges for the workers you have engaged with?
Well, thank you. Can you guys hear me well? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, as mentioned earlier, I think gig work is not really been new, right? It's been around for a while, especially in Southeast Asia, where much of the economy has been informal. The personal story was my dad used to be a gig worker. He was a construction worker in Singapore, and he would go to the coffee shop, downstairs, and wait for work to come. And sometimes he would get employed for a few days to paint a house, and other times not, right? And I think what technology has done is really kind of make that coffee house where the 20 gig workers gather to a 5 million one, right? Which is the size of the platform that we have created in Southeast Asia. And I think that has created a lot of access, and with access comes also better income certainty. And what is also, I think, helpful is, I think in Southeast Asia, what has also happened is we have seen a persistent class of people that were kept out of the digital economy. And we like to think that gig economy has been one way where we could get people on board, right? And one number is 1.5 million of our partners on the Grab platform has opened a bank account for the very first time, right? And bank account it's a start to much more social and financial inclusion. So I think that's all this benefit that we are seeing in what I still think are early years of the gig economy in Southeast Asia. And if you think about, if you pull it up one level to think about what's the impact on economies, I think the labor market in Southeast Asia, especially the formal one, have been quite rigid in some aspect. You see, companies kind of not really wanting to employ full-time employees because of all the cost that comes associated with that. And that's one thing. So that results in a lot of informal workforce. The other thing is that the economic cycles are getting faster and faster and shorter, and the pandemic is really one good example. And there's a lot of disruption to the labor market. And we like to think that the gig economy is one way in which you can kind of lubricate that transition. As people go from jobs to job that cuts across different sectors and the need to retrain, gig economy can be a stopgap. The other thing which Uma mentioned is economic inclusion, where we've seen data that shows that a lot of people choose the platform, right? 70% choose the platform for flexibility, meaning autonomy. And that means a lot of more women, a lot more retirees could get onto the platform. And that's really driving the economy. These people will then also pay taxes. It also helps government. And so we also see that economic inclusion perspective. So there's a lot of good stuff. And I think we can sometimes get too excited about the positive side of it. but there's also a lot of issues, and I wouldn't repeat all the issues that Uma was mentioning. It certainly are issues which is there in Southeast Asia as well. And I don't think we are right now at the space where, in the evolution, we're kind of at the space where it can be sustainable. There's still a lot to be fixed. We're part of the actors that can fix this problem, but we can't do it alone. And kind of that's why this conversation is really important. And we'd love to hear from other panelists on the issues and some ideas on how we can jointly solve them.
Correct. That's really good. Thank you. And I love the word autonomy, because I think later on we will also explore this because people do choose gig work for that reason. And I think we're definitely not going to skim on the challenges. So thank you, Yu Hang, for your contribution. Let's move on to Trevor. Trevor, you wear many hats, and very impressively, you're an Englishman that has spent over 2 decades in Cambodia. In your view, what challenges and opportunities has the growth of gig economy platforms created for the labor market?
Thanks, Ilaria. Yeah, I just want to set the context here so that the viewers are aware. We have a very young country, age 50% under the age of 26 years old, and many young people coming out of schools, coming of school age, and more than 25% haven't completed high school. So we have a big challenge here with a workforce coming through who has low skills. And since the COVID epidemic, we've seen more than 90% drop in tourism numbers, and also more than 150,000 garment factory workers laid off. So there's a lot of challenges within the economy. It's not all negative, but these are some of the challenges that are there. So we see that the opportunities that gig working platform economy provides is a low skill and low cost entry into the market with a smartphone and a 3-wheeler tuk-tuk. They can enter the market and they can start earning money. And many young people are the breadwinners in their family. And those who have been affected by the COVID pandemic have been able to move into the platform economy as delivery drivers, as tuk-tuk and taxi drivers. There isn't a lot of Airbnb or other ones. It's primarily just those. But it's given them an opportunity. Previously to this, we had the motorbikes with the carriage behind it that was pulling along, no digital support at all, and very disorganized, and they would just wait outside places, hoping that people come out and they would try and hire them. Now the digital platforms have given them the opportunity to be able to manage that and to be efficient and productive with their time. So this is a very positive step in that. And again, this is an area where the options come in for they can work flexible hours, as Yu Hang said, and they have opportunities to have maybe more than one income. So they have it could be a supplementary income from a main income as well. So there's lots of opportunities there as well.
Thank you so much. And in many ways, I also love how you set context for us in terms of the challenges, because Cambodia has a very young population because it also went through a lot in the 70s. And what you also mentioned in the sharp drop in tourism shows also the vulnerability of the country to this sharp drop, whereas I think some countries may suffer a little less when COVID hit in terms of tourism. But all in all, I think the skill level is important too. And I would love to revisit that later on as we move forward with the conversation. Thank you so much, Trevor. Now, the next question I would love to direct to both Trevor, so stay on with us, and Adrian. this is really about the expansion in the number of people wanting to join platform work. So I just wonder if you guys have really seen a sharp expansion in the number of people wanting to join platform work, and why are they attracted by the opportunity to join the platform? And I guess give us a little bit of an idea of the background of some of the gig workers that you interact with or represent. I know, Trevor, just now you have covered some of it, but maybe if you have any additional comment on the expansion, the level of expansion, and any additional points on how attractive this opportunity for people, please feel free to supplement. Why don't we start with Trevor first, and then we'll move to Adrian.
Yeah, thank you, Ilaria. Going back to the ease of access and entry into the work, many from the tourist sector have moved in, but before that, we saw a huge rise in the number of tuk-tuk drivers in 2015 through down to 2018. More than 20,000 new taxi drivers and tuk-tuk drivers came into the market. And this is a great opportunity for also customers, because they know fixed prices on the platform, and they know that, for example, with Grab, you know the driver, you even get asked questions during the trip, whether everything's going okay. And all this is great for the consumers. And so this is what's drawn lots of people to it. When COVID hit, we had the lockdowns like many countries, and we saw a huge rise in delivery drivers. And many people in red zones and amber zones in the city were actually cut off and really relied on them for getting food and drink and other things. So this was a very vital service to provide. And they had special passes, which I believe the platforms were helping them get, so that they were able to move around the city and go through the police roadblocks and the military roadblocks into those areas and move around. So again, it's been a very out of a very difficult situation. There's some very positive points there.
Got it. No, thank you so much, Adrian.
So I've actually written a few articles regarding gig worker, and I think it broadly fall into a few categories. The first one would be for people who may be out of work, and going into the gig workforce may be not just an easier way, but in fact a more profitable option as well. I can give you an example. So when I was in the outplacement industry, we were trying to get this guy who was a process engineer back into the workforce. He was maybe picking up about 2.5K per month. And we thought, okay, entry level salary, we should be able to place him quite easily. 6 months later, we are still struggling to place him. And the reason is because he was telling us with the same amount of time that he can spend, he could easily earn double of that just doing gig work. So that's one category. Of course, the other category would be for people who just prefer to get the flexibility of time. Even just for myself, I personally have been a gig worker before. And one of the key reasons is because I needed that time with my kids. I want to send them to school, pick them up, bring them to a playground, and really try to have that as my key priority. So that is also something that's happening for many people as well. And I think the third group, and this may not be a big group, but it is still quite significant, which is for people who may not be able to get into the normal workforce. One of the lady that I did my research on was this lady who actually is she actually has physical disability, so she's in a wheelchair, and she struggled to really get any form of work. In the office, in admin, anything. And that happened for many, many years. And only when gig work started to become more prevalent, she signed up. And there's no discrimination there. As long as you're able to deliver the outcome, you're in, join us. So she's very happy that she can gain independence. And I think most importantly, a sense of dignity, as well as the self-reliance, because she's also confident that she can take care of herself and also give her parents the ease of mind as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. In fact, I think seeing some of the firsthand stories of people with disability being able to reinvent themselves and find gig work in areas where traditional people wouldn't expect them to do, and they thrive. I remember actually there's a deaf driver on the Grab platform that consistently gets top rating, and it's just one of the most moving things to see people dignified by work like that. I also love the article you wrote. So if anyone wants to read some of these articles that Adrian has written, go into his LinkedIn, Google him. I really enjoy the part you highlight about work-life balance. I think especially after COVID, everyone will identify with that part, needing to spend time with family and the flexibility that gig work offers. So you also mentioned, obviously, that you spend time as a gig worker, as an Uber driver. Would you mind telling us just a little bit about how you decided to, do that switch? Because I know you've been an HR professional for a long time. What was the reason that you made that switch at that time to take up gig work as an Uber driver?
There's a couple of reasons. One, of course, is to spend more time with my kids. And I think the second of all was, to be honest, at that point in time, I was struggling to find formal employment. So I thought it's an ideal opportunity for me to give it a try. And back then, I would say the barrier of entry was much easier. There was no PDVL. This was quite many years ago. So it's very easy to get into the market and to give it a go.
Right. Well, you are definitely a Singapore specialist. So I would like to zoom in on a Singapore specific view. Going back to looking at the main opportunities and challenges, right? In your view, what are the main opportunities and challenges of gig workers right now in Singapore?
I think it will fall into two categories. One will be competition, the other one will be regulation. Competition, we probably could go back a few years ago when private hire drivers first come into the market. And if you still remember, taxi drivers was banding together, creating some form of ruckus, nuisance, just trying to chase them away. And it just seems just like yesterday. So those are the kind of things that may happen when people feel that you might be entering into their territory or their turf and trying to take away their rice bowl. But I think most significantly is, and on the competition side, I think end of the day, market demand will take care of it. But most significantly is really on the regulation side. I mean, when I first started, there's no PDVL, and I've never done delivery, but I've seen cases where, and I've seen, actual facts where, you can no longer use certain vehicle and you have to comply by certain things, this and that. And of course, all this makes it very, very challenging. Even for private hire drivers, I understand they have made some adjustment to the minimum age. So if I was younger back then, I couldn't even get into this sector. So those are the key things that is happening. And I think progressively, we are also seeing other institution or association trying to, draw contrast between gig workers and formal employment, and the fact that, gig worker, you don't get the protection that you need, you don't get medical benefits, blah, 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 those kind of stuff. In a way, trying to unionize the entire thing. But the way I look at it, and being a previous gig worker myself, that is not our key priority. We just want, first, livelihood, two, flexibility of time. If we indeed want to have all these benefits and all that, we will not even consider gig work to begin with. So, but still, I think over time, and we have seen in the case of UK for Uber, that definitely has created a huge disruption to the way they operate business. And all this cost eventually will have to be passed back to someone, and customers will be the one that will have to suffer.
Right. No, you've opened a lot of cans just now, and I wish we could open all of them, but let's try as we wrap. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you so much. Now let's shift gears a little bit. Let's follow the trail of the money, since nothing really operates in this world properly without the support of capital. So Pandu, what role do large investors and platform companies play in shaping the way that their portfolio companies act in the gig economy?
Thanks, Hilaria, and thanks for staying up so late for you.
Pleasure.
Hi, nice to meet everyone here. Nice to meet you. So I think, the development of gig economy, and I think capital, private capital in this case, that have been fueling the growth of technology. I would say the technology, don't forget, these gig economy comes from sharing economy. And essentially, it's technology that fuels this, right? So companies on the basis of technology. So obviously, Grab is one of the platforms that have been growing this. I see there's more positives overall. And the reason being is very simple, okay? And I think this COVID also is a very good reminder to all of us. In all of the country that I think all of us, where everyone lives and where I live in Indonesia, for a country to fulfill its economic potential, we want to be able to all the productive people to also become productive member of society, right? And maybe in Singapore the case is a bit different than in Indonesia. I mean, obviously Singapore itself, just population wise, is relatively small, right? So if you look at Indonesia, the biggest employer outside of Jakarta, for example, are government, right? So what we need, and especially now with COVID, are actual jobs, right? So what does technology do, right? What technology does, allow people to create from idle time to become productive time. Simple as that. If they're able to do that, you can have more economic output. And if you can have more economic output, hopefully you can have more opportunities. And technology allows the everyday people to have that ability. I think what Adrian's story suggests, what Yu Hang's story suggests, what Trevor's story suggests are quite consistent also in this part of the world in Indonesia. So I see it's more of the positive result of it. Obviously, in more developed countries, the discussion become deeper about rights, about the ability to let go, etc. But for countries that are growing very fast, like in Indonesia, the big challenges, and especially due to COVID, is how to create more employment. And technology companies are able to do that. People today are shifting in Indonesia. In the last 1 year, we have almost more than 10 million small medium enterprise, and the small medium enterprise in Indonesia are small. These are companies that are probably doing less, on average about 30,000 or less Singapore dollars, right? And they are moving from offline to online. That's 1.5 Singapore that moved in the last 12 months, right? So it's significant, right? And then later on, I think the next story will be how technology companies can help them through financial services to provide credit, lending, right? There was a story also, Yu Hang says that, hey, there's now new people that actually sign up to have bank accounts, right? Because the story is actually now is moving to get the unbanked, quote unquote, to become the underbanked. The next challenge will go from the underbanked to become bankable. As simple as that, the narrative. Private capital have taken the biggest risk of creating these changes. Actually, this is actually a great time because as investors, we've been waiting, Ilaria, for 8 years. A lot of us invested 2013, 14. C obviously did it in 2017, and really excited about Grab's soon to be IPO. Because what it does, all these IPO will recycle capital for further development into the economy. All of that capital that are profitable will be recycled back into the ecosystem and in a more meaningful way. Why? Because essentially the last decade has shown technology in Southeast Asia works. It has strong positive impact, and it can create positive ecosystem, not just for the stakeholders, but also for shareholders. So I think that's what's going to happen. I'm so glad the success of Grab will be the success of Gojek and the success of other platforms that are right now going through this public market experience. And I think what it does the next 12 to 24 months is just the beginning of the technology sector moving upward. So that's my view, because they have taken really the biggest venture risk in the last decade.
Yes. No, I love that. And actually, I think a lot of people may have overlooked this, right? There's just forgetting that actually the investors, the financiers have put a lot of money in long-term risk too, right? Private capital, VC, you actually wait a number of years before you see the fruits. But I love what you said about how capital would be recycled back into the ecosystem. It's the whole financial multiplier effect that empowers more productivity, spending power, and it grows and blooms the economy. Please stay with us, Pandu, and I'll bring Yu Hang back in. Let's zoom out a little bit to a slightly more macro question, because both Pandu and Yu Hang, you guys have quite an international lens and exposure to different countries. How unique is gig work in Southeast Asia compared to the rest of the world, in your opinion? Maybe we can start with Pandu and then Yu Hang.
Yeah, I think the gig economy, or even the informal economy, is a significant part for Indonesia. I mean, I guess I can comment Indonesia because I live here, been operating here. It's actually a significant part. And I think what technology can do will actually enlarge the overall economic system, because one, you'll get people to be registered as taxpayers. You'll get people to be able to be part of the credit cycle, right? Because a lot of the fintech movement now is the ability to provide credit to small, medium enterprises and to grow that part of the business. And third, I would say it actually should increase productivity among the SMEs, right? Because I think the biggest engine of growth for Indonesia today will be the SMEs. So I would say gig economy, I mean, essentially all the merchants in Grab are doing quote unquote gig economy that becomes full time, right? They are their own employer, right? All the sellers in all these different platforms, that's what they are. And I think they're moving from becoming, I mean, gigs sometimes are considered like part-time, right? Where you kind of measure your own time. But for them, this gig has become a full-time gig for them, right? So they have become turning from a what is it called, part-time, into a full-time entrepreneur. You're essentially growing new entrepreneurs, right? So for me, I think it's super exciting, and COVID really has pushed technology firms and technology at least 3 to 4 years ahead, in my view. So that's
in your words, it's really the evolution, basically. In Southeast Asia, the gig work is not really in a box. It actually expands and changes itself. It's kind of like a caterpillar to butterfly scenario, where it becomes part-time, becomes full-time, becomes a livelihood, becomes financial inclusion, becomes productivity. And I think that, compared to the rest of the world, especially developed economies, it's a big difference. And
it's a different story. Yeah, I agree.
Wonderful. Yu Hang, any views on how unique gig work is in Southeast Asia compared to the rest of the world?
Well, I think first there's quite a bit of similarity in the sense that it's growing really fast. But as Pandu mentioned, I think Southeast Asia, first, there is really no Southeast Asia in the sense that Southeast Asia is very diverse, right? And even Indonesia is very diverse. It's many mini economies with very different characteristics. And so I think what is consistent, however, is the challenges that the opportunity, yes, we've talked about it, but also the challenges that, despite it being Singapore versus, say, Cambodia, I think the challenges are very similar, even though the solutions might be very different, right? We talk about the need to protect autonomy, flexibility. We talk about financial security. We talk about professional development. The gig economy is maybe a 5-10 years phenomenon in Southeast Asia. But if you look 20, 30, 40 years ahead, you will start to see, hey, maybe there's a bunch of people that's going to be on the gig economy for the entire career. They just kind of move from different gigs, different platforms. And for those people, what about their retirement needs? Maybe they don't think about it if it's a half a year gig, but if they do it for the next 30 years, it will be an issue. What about their professional development, right? We talk about fair work conditions. How do we design fair work conditions that is grounded on what's really happening, right? If you take what might make sense in Europe and try to put it in Southeast Asia, maybe it doesn't make sense. And so what I feel that Southeast Asia is very diverse, and the gig profile of partners are also very different. I do think that the challenges and their kind of protection requirements are actually quite similar. And so we need to align kind of on those challenges and find solutions that work for each of the country and each of the segments within the gig economy. And that, I think, would be the challenge, which is to align ourselves on the challenges, but then to make sure that we avoid one size fits all solution for Southeast Asia.
I like that. Challenges similar, solutions different. I think one of the first things that I was shocked when I first moved to Singapore and got exposed to Southeast Asia is that, people like to lump Southeast Asia together as one kind of massive region, but every country is so different, like crazy different. And I think unless people have actually been on the ground and, been to Indonesia and then went to Thailand and then went to Vietnam and then went to Cambodia, it is hard to really understand how different the countries are. So I really like that, what you suggested, Yu Hang. Okay, wow. Time passes very quickly. I guess we're now finally at our final question. We'll do a lightning round, just one sentence, but very important question. So I would love to ask all panelists, what do you expect to see regarding the development of gig work in the future? Let's start with Adrian, and then Pandu, and then Yu Hang, and then Trevor.
For me, I hope it could be expanded into much more different scope. Right now, we are seeing gig work. I know it's going beyond a sentence, but right now we're seeing gig work just in very limited areas. I hope more people would be able to bring that across to different functions like web design, marketing, anything at all, and really try to really have a different approach when it comes to work, where it's more of something that I want to do, and once I'm out, I can go into something else. So taking a more of a tour of duty kind of approach to work, rather than expecting the iron rice bowl kind of concept, contract versus perm job, those kind of thing. And I think that will help to create more flexibility, and most importantly, more happiness for people, because work usually is one of the key things that makes people unhappy.
Wow, you spoke a handful there. Thank you, Adrian. Pandu.
Yeah, I think gig, at least in the business that we operate in the companies we invest in, I think there's going to be exponential growth, where a lot of new people, young people in Indonesia will be involved in this gig economy, and I think it will have a strong positive impact the development of Indonesia.
Thank you, Pandu. Yu Hang?
I'd like to take a view from the gig worker, right? I mean, I think we are really at the beginning. What would be the future will be for the gig entrepreneur, the gig worker, his opportunity to earn livelihood explodes over time, right? I mean, if you think about the taxi driver, the taxi uncle, aunties, last time, they kind of pay rent and then they need to drive to make money. Today, you look at the drivers, they are picking up passengers, they're picking up food, they're delivering parcels, they are doing mapping, geo-mapping for Grab and earning money out of it. They're running advertisements, right? And I think the opportunity for the gig workers to make a living and still have social protection and to still have flexibility and work-life balance and happiness, I think that's the future we need to be. It's not going to be the default future, because I think we need to kind of do things to influence it towards that. And that's where I think this conversation is really, really helpful. But I'm super optimistic about the future of gig work in Southeast Asia.
Great. Trevor?
Yeah, just echoing the other panelists, but in Cambodia context, it's really that we have so many young people, and this is going to provide great opportunities. They have an income, they can develop their skills, customer service skills, financial literacy. As they grow, they can expand. And so this is very positive for the country and the future, and the opportunities that we see already coming through in other countries like Singapore and Europe. They aren't even here yet. This will be an expansion of the platforms into there. So it's very positive for us.
Well, thank you, everyone, for your contribution. In many ways, I love that you all actually skew towards positive, towards the gig economy and the prosperity and opportunities it has brought for gig workers, which may surprise people if they dial in from, California, USA, where I am currently from, where the whole tone is very different. But here is the beauty of understanding different countries and global dynamics and also geopolitically, right? We are also seeing economically, Southeast Asia is just starting to grow its middle class. And quite a few of the speakers just now mentioned about very young population. The fact that the population is so young in Vietnam and Cambodia, also really changes productivity and spending pattern. And once we look at spending, what Pandu talked about, right, the power of financial inclusion, of dollars being spent back into the economy, and how does that multiplier push the domestic consumption in different countries, and that is actually a wonderful picture. Of course, we're not avoiding the topics of challenges, which I also really, really appreciate the candid comments from each panelist. Thank you all. Sorry we have to end this panel now because we're hitting the time, but thank you so much for spending time with us and sharing your insights. To reiterate, really, this is a very complex issue and we don't have answers to everything right now. This is just the first of many dialogues that we hope to convene to foster more understanding and common ground to move forward. So why don't we right now hand over the time to our seasoned thought leader in this field, Sarah Elder, senior economist from the ILO, for our next session. Sarah, over to you.